and thank you for joining me. My name is Holly Quibell, and today I'm going to be talking to the author of this amazing book, And the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, by Jon Kirkman. Jon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Holly. It's great to speak to you today. I believe you've got some questions that you want to ask me about the Genesis book. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got, I think. And I'll try my very best to answer all the questions that you ask about the book. And I'm sure there's a few questions out there that people want to hear the answers to regarding the book. So happy to do it. So fire away, as they say.
So Jon, the first thing I have to ask you is, after you've already successfully created 2 books on the band Yes, what made you decide to tackle the band Genesis, and not just specifically Genesis, but tackle what could arguably be said as the most in-depth and analytically complex album that Genesis ever did, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway? How did you come about this project?
Well, quite simply, at the time I decided to do it, having published 2 books on Yes, you're always thinking ahead of the next book or the next project that you're going to do. So consequently, it was coming up to the 40th anniversary of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway album coming out, and also the tour. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get the book out then because the publisher backed out. It took them 4 years to decide they didn't want to do it, and it kind of left me high and dry. But I already had the bit between my teeth at this point. So the reasons why I did it, well, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway is not probably the biggest selling Genesis album, nor is it the most popular Genesis album. It is, however, the most talked about Genesis album for a number of reasons. It was the final album that featured Peter Gabriel before he left the band, and it was also a concept album, so it's very interesting on a number of levels. And I think that's why I decided to do a book on that specific part of the Genesis career. I could have gone maybe back a bit further and done something on Foxtrot, or could have gone a bit further the other way and maybe done something on Wyndham Wuthering and Trick of the Tail, or maybe even Abacab or Duke, or any of those great albums. But I thought, as a project, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway deserved a book written about it, and that's why I did it.
One of the things that I really love about your book specifically, above other books, is that there's so much variety and content in this book. You've got beautiful photographs, interviews, posters, production sheets, all kinds of great topics and articles and things to discuss. My question to you then is, how did you decide what to include and what to exclude in a project like this?
Well, basically we decided that we were going to have the interviews. I conducted the interviews. In terms of images and memorabilia, we put it out to the various fans and fan pages, and people got in touch with me, and if I thought it was interesting enough and relative to the book, then we put it in. And there's a lot of stuff in there that I was just absolutely knocked out by. I'm thinking, wow, where did people get this stuff from? And they've either got it at the time when they went to see the band perform The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in terms of tickets or posters, or they've collected it since. And thank goodness for fans. That's all I can say with bands like Genesis and all these other big major rock bands. If it wasn't for the fans, a lot of their history really would be lost. And I think some bands should be a little more appreciative of their fans and how they look after their legacy, because I've found over the years that a lot of bands really have no idea what they have or what they've done. So thank God for the fans, that's all I can say. But how did we decide what went in? Pretty much whatever people sent me and said, I've got this, what do you think? And I would kind of make the decision there and then. We try to get as much stuff in there as we can and be as diverse as we can. Some of the posters were absolutely amazing, and we've got quite a few of those in. Same with the record labels. There's a dazzling array of different singles released in different territories, and they've got different labels and in some cases different picture sleeves, so that was interesting. So we tried our best to sort of get as much as we could into the book, and as I said, the general opinion is that it was very good and everybody enjoyed it.
Now Jon, you've been in the business for couple of years now. How much of the content in this book came from your own personal archives, and how much of it was derived from scratch, specifically for this project?
Well, that's a difficult one. None of it came from my personal archives, because although I saw the tour before The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour, and I saw the tour after that, I didn't actually manage to get a ticket to see The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And where I am in Liverpool, it was the only city on the entire tour that the band performed 3 times. They did 3 concerts in Liverpool on the Lamb tour. And I remember going to the gig on literally all 3 nights to see if I could get a ticket, and it would have to be from a ticket tout because the tour was sold out, certainly in the UK. And ticket prices were around about £2.50, £3, if that. I don't think it was very expensive, but the ticket touts wanted £10 a ticket. A lot of money in 1975, and I just thought, I'm not paying £10. And I think the lowest one tout, I think he felt sorry for me, said, you can have it for £8, and I said, no, I'm not paying £8. £8, seriously, was a lot of money in 1975. So a lot of it was kind of provided by fans of the band, and a lot of information by various people who'd followed Genesis's career right the way through, and it's surprising how much information is out there, but also it's surprising how little information is out there, particularly regarding the live dates. There's still confusion now, even amongst the band members. But it was an interesting thing when I actually decided to do it, sort of finding photographs. I mean, I took the decision to try and get photographs that were not seen a lot. In other words, let's face it, a photo of Peter Gabriel dressed up as the Slipper Man in Los Angeles looks pretty much like a photograph of Peter Gabriel dressed up as the Slipper Man in London. So we tried to kind of avoid too many of those photos. So we managed to get hold of some people who had some great photos that have been rarely seen, if at all. So in fact, none of it was from my archive, because as I said, I don't really have much of a collection of memorabilia and archive material, so it was all sourced from other places really, and other fans.
Jon, I have to say, as an academic myself and someone who likes to collect and read a lot of books, this book specifically has so much content in it, not just in terms of photography, but mostly in terms of writing, and it's really impressive to be able to read all kinds of different articles within one book specifically. How long did the overall writing process take for you?
There were certain people brought in to write certain parts, and I basically conducted most of the interviews, in fact all the interviews, with the various people connected with the album. And we had 2 members interviewed. We have Tony Banks, and we also have Steve Hackett. Steve Hackett did 2 lengthy interviews about the creation of the album and also touring the album. And we also spoke to Ant Phillips as well, who was working on a project which would eventually become Ant's first solo album, The Geese and the Ghost. And he was working on that with Mike Rutherford at the same time as Mike was working on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So Ant has a kind of unique take on what was going on. He was able to kind of look in and see what was going on with the band, even though he'd left the band some 4 years previous to The Lamb being recorded. In addition to that, I had to sort of source all the photographs, and I had to liaise with people who had memorabilia and get permission for that and things like that. So it kind of took not a long time, I have to say. Originally, as we were talking earlier, the book was going to be published by someone else, and after 4 years that fell through. So in terms of getting the book together that I did, it actually took about 8 months for me to get the book, because I had to start from scratch with the book, because I wasn't allowed to use any of the material that the previous publisher had put together. So I had to do everything myself. That means literally sourcing the photographs, getting the ISBN number, everything. All the little details had to be taken care of. So I did all that, and that took around about 7 months, literally. So not that long, but very intense.
Knowing the hoops that you had to metaphorically jump through, not only to get this started and off the ground, but also to maintain, What was the most challenging part of putting together a massive project like this on your own?
Well, not so much writing it, because it was just transcribing a lot of the interviews and actually putting the book together, kind of getting the chapters together. That didn't take that long because it almost wrote itself. We wanted to speak to certain people. We spoke to a record company guy, we spoke to a couple of the road crew, we spoke to Aubrey Powell from Hypnosis about the creation of the sleeve. We did 2 lengthy interviews with Steve Hackett. We did one with Tony Banks and also one with Anthony Phillips. And that was kind of relatively easy, because that's what I do in my, if you like, my day job anyway. I'm a broadcaster and a journalist, so doing interviews is not that difficult for me. But liaising between the people who had photographs and also the people who had memorabilia, that took a lot longer. And I was very lucky in the sense that a lot of people allowed me to have use of their memorabilia and their photographs.
During the writing and creating of this project, were there any particular stories or concepts that you didn't really anticipate or came to light with doing such a unique project like this?
Well, not really, no. It was, at the time, talking to Steve about it, a lot of the material was done at Headley Grange. So the concept, of course, came from Peter, and sometimes it was kind of difficult to keep track of where it was going. And then, of course, Peter left during the writing process at Headley Grange and then came back. He wasn't gone for that long. Steve seems to remember it as being just a couple of days, and I think that's pretty much what Gabriel said as well at one point. There were no big surprises. The only thing that surprised me was just how many different singles and picture sleeves and record labels and posters and everything else surrounding The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway there were. And luckily a lot of fans have archived all this material. I mean, my thanks really do go out to the people who've collected a lot of this material and allowed me to use it in the book, because there's so much out there, and I was absolutely amazed at what was out there. But regarding the concept, I think the band were under a pretty tight schedule when they were actually putting the album together. In fact, the album still wasn't finished, according to Steve, when he had his accident, and that was a convenient accident as far as Steve Hackett was concerned, because he said the album still wasn't finished. So in a way, his accident was rather convenient, as he tells us in the book.
Now, I'm aware there's already a couple of books out on the market already that talk about the Lamb in various subjects and forms, but how would you say your book compares to the content that's already out there?
There's a couple of books out there. There's a very, very good book out there by Robert Ellis, the professional photographer, and it's superb, and it's all the photos that Robert took. There's not as much text in Robert's book. I think he wanted to let the photos do the talking, and they do. There's some great images in Robert's book, and if you see it anywhere, check it out. It's very, very good. There is another book which is kind of a very scholarly tome and a very, if you like, in-depth look at the album from an academic point of view, but that's what it is, and it's great to read. I mean, I did read it, and it's very, very good. But my book has a lot of images in from live shows, also images of various concert tickets, memorabilia. We've also got a lot of paperwork in there, things, for instance, like theatres sending on to Genesis's management how much money they'd had in pre-sale tickets, which wasn't very much, believe me. I was staggered. I think it was just over £1,000, which is not very much, even allowing for the times. It's not very much, and I guess that's reflected in the fact that the ticket prices were not very much. I mean, you could get in to see Genesis for about £1.50 on some of the dates, which is very, very cheap when you consider how much you would pay for a ticket now. Also, I think the actual images that we've got in there, they're not seen a lot, I have to say. The images we went for were the ones that you don't normally see. Some amateurs and some professional in there. There's a mixture of both. And I went for the ones that people don't normally see anywhere. So the pictures in there, and there's over 400 images, I think, in there, but very rarely seen live photos of the band. Some of the pictures of the tickets and things like that, I was amazed at the tickets, because nowadays, of course, you get a ticket for a concert and it looks like what it is, a computerized, generated counterfoil ticket. In those days, the actual diversity in the design of the tickets was incredible. Some of them almost look homemade. There is, of course, the big theatres who kind of printed, they had a very, very similar feel to them. They were paper tickets. I know the Liverpool Empire and the tickets from some of the other Empire-owned theatres. I think it was called Moss Empires, the company that owned the Liverpool Empire, and places like that. They may have owned the Palace in Manchester, which had a similar ticket. But the diversity of the designs and the tickets, both here in Europe and America, was incredible. And we've got a lot of images in there of the various tickets, and it's great to look through them. Same with the posters. There's a lot of different posters. And also, believe it or not, there were so many different singles released and labels on the singles and picture sleeves. So there's a real dazzling array, and my thanks go out to the people who allowed us to use their treasure, for want of a better expression. And all those photos are in the book, and the people are credited for their work and their sort of, if you like, their artifacts. But we were very, very lucky with a lot of the fans allowing us to use that, and bless their hearts. I hope they're very, very happy to have their work seen in the book.
Now, Jon, for those that don't know, you actually created two versions of this book. You created a softback version, which is right here. It's unfortunately sold out. Sorry for those who did not get it. But you've also created a hardback, which is still available. How many copies in total did you make of both of these books?
Well, we had 200 copies of the softback, which were numbered and signed by me. That is fully subscribed. We sold out of that pretty quickly. We have 300 copies of the hardback, which have been signed by me and numbered 1 to 300. And also you get an insert sheet that's been signed by Steve Hackett, which you can either stick into your book or you can have it framed. Either way, because we were told, I'd like to frame this. Is there any chance? Well, so we went with the fact that it would be easier for Steve to sign a lot of papers rather than sign a lot of books, as it were, because it just means either getting Steve to where we are or going to where Steve is with the books. So he signed these sheets, and they're very nice sheets. They've got little sort of images on and things like that, and Steve signed those. There's 300 of that, and I think we're down to about the last 70, if that. So what you have to understand is, if you buy a copy of the hardback, you are going to have a copy of a book, and there's only another 299 copies in the world of that particular book. There is not going to be a reprint of this particular book, and we're not looking to do a softback or even a PDF. There is no foreign language copies either, I'm afraid, basically down to the cost. But certainly not in this format. It's a large format book. It weighs a lot. It weighs, I think, nearly like 4 pounds or something like that. Was it 4 kilograms? I can never remember with the kilograms and the pound thing, but it's quite a heavy book. And as I said, it's limited to 300 copies. What we have left is the hardback, and we've only got about 70 left of those as well. So it's done very, very well, and we expect to sell out very, very soon.
Of course, the first thing that any fan is going to notice even before they purchase this book is the beautiful design. Not just of the hardback, but even the softback as well. It's very captivating. It draws the eye in. Even the back of the books, they're beautifully edited and created. Did you design the book covers yourself? And if so, what kind of branding or look were you hoping to achieve for this project?
Well, we had 2 editions. We had a softback edition, which is a black cover, and we have a hardback edition, which is the white cover, which is a kind of almost similar in thinking to the actual album. It's got members of Genesis on the front, lined up, a bit like the sort of pictures on the front of the Lamb cover. I didn't design it. It was done by a wonderful company called Bang Design, although there was originally another design by Alan Fenner of Pulse Art, and they are graphic designers as well. But we went with the version with Bang Design, which I had to okay, and when I saw it, I was very, very happy. I mean, I was pleased with the pulse art version that Alan Fenner did, but when Bang designed it, I thought, in keeping with the feel of the book, they actually designed the layout of the book, and I thought I'd go with their design. I had to okay it. I told them what I wanted, and they delivered it, and they delivered an absolutely wonderful design for both the hardback and the softback, and the layout of the book as well. I was very, very pleased with that, but I didn't design it. I'd like to say I was talented enough to do that, but I've got to be honest and say no, I wasn't, although I did have the final say. But the actual cover of the books were designed by Bang Design, which is a graphic design company in the UK.
Now, if people are interested in purchasing this beautiful hardcover edition, because as we all know, the softback here is gone, done, sold out, sorry, blinked, you missed it. Where can we direct people to go in order to purchase this beautiful hardback edition of Genesis's And the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway before it too sells out?
Where can I buy the book, you say? Well, if you go to my website, it's Jon Kirkman, JONKIRKMAN.co.uk. Click on books, click on the drop-down list, and you can order it there. As I said, it's the only place you can get it. It won't be available in the shops, it won't be available on Amazon or any of the other online agencies or bookshops. It is only available via my website, and as I said, it's a limited edition. We have just about 70 copies of the hardback left, and that's it. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's as simple as that. And so far the response has been very, very positive. In fact, pretty much 100% positive, which is very good for me, because you kind of worry about these things when people sort of buy things from you and you think, are they going to like it? And overwhelmingly people have said yes, they love it, which is very nice. So thank you for all the very kind things that everybody said. But you can get it from jonkirkman.co.uk. That's JONKIRKMAN.co.uk.
Now, Jon, as the sole creator of this beautiful book, I'm sure a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and love have gone into this book and creating it. So as the author of this beautiful creation, what do you hope people will take away from your latest body of work?
Well, I just hope that people enjoy what I've done in putting together the book. Is it definitive? I can't say anything's definitive. I mean, it's the only book of its type at the moment. So that's what I will say. Do I think people will enjoy it? Well, I know people are enjoying it because of the feedback that I've received from the people who've already bought the book, and they're absolutely knocked out by it. There's been a lot of hard work, a lot of love, a few tears, it has to be said, gone into it, and I've done my very best to make this a really nice book that people will enjoy looking through time and time again. It's like most coffee table books. If it's sort of on the coffee table and people come in, they like to look through it, and I think sometimes once you open the book, I think it will encourage you to leaf through it a little bit more. I think there's a lot in there, and there's some amazing images in there, and there's some nice interviews in there as well. So I hope you enjoy reading the interviews, and I also hope you enjoy looking at the photographs and the images in the book. I also hope that it maybe encourages you to go and have another listen to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I play that album regularly. Am I any sort of the wiser as regards what it's all about? No, of course not. But it doesn't stop me from enjoying listening to the album. Some great songs on there. Tony Banks thinks there were songs that were better on the albums before and the albums after. But I guess being a part of the band and a little closer to it than anybody else, it's difficult for him to sort of see what other people enjoy about that album. He says there's some good albums on there, and he also said he's very proud of having been involved in making the album. So I guess that's fair enough. What will people take away from it? Well, I hope that, like I said, it maybe encourage them to reinvestigate the album. Although I don't think they'll need much encouragement, because by and large it has been bought by Genesis fans. And like I said, I just hope maybe you can play the album and leaf through the book while you're listening to the album. So that's what I hope people will take away from it. And as I said, there's been a lot of hard work and a lot of passion put into the book, and I do hope that you enjoy it. And I hope you keep enjoying it.
So I must say, as a Genesis fan myself, I'm a bit curious. How did you end up being introduced to Genesis and presumably later on the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway album specifically? And do you have any particular aspects of that album that you like?
My first brush with Genesis, as it were, was via a friend called David Garrett, who was at school with me. And he said, you should listen to this album. And it was Nursery Crime, and the very first track he played me was Harold the Barrel. I know, strange track. And it was a very strange track, but it hooked me. So that's where I kind of came into Genesis. And it was around about the time that Peter was wearing the fox's head as well, around about the time of Foxtrot, Supper's Ready and all that. And it was fascinating. And believe it or not, it's hard to understand for those who weren't around at that time. And I know there's a lot of fans who weren't around at that time, but for those of us who were following the band, around about the time Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, the live album, and then The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, they seemed to be in the papers a lot. And there seemed to be an awful lot written about Genesis, and they did work very hard. They did tour a lot, both in the UK and Europe, of course, and in America. It's almost kind of tentative in America, as they started off, I think, in 1972 in America. And when they toured The Lamb, the first place they went to, it was going to be the UK, but due to Steve's accident, the tour was pushed back. So at the end of 1974, they went to America first. So goodness only knows what a lot of people made of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And the album wasn't out when the tour started as well, but that's not necessarily that important, because that happened to a lot of bands back in the day. Bands would start a tour thinking that the album would be in the shops, and sometimes that didn't happen. Another big example of that was Yes and Tales from Topographic Oceans, which the band had started their UK tour, but the album wasn't out until, quite a few dates into the tour. And it was the same in America for Genesis and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So I kind of came to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway just as, if you like, a natural progression from Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, the live album, and then of course The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I do remember having to take it back because it was jumping, the record was jumping, there was a fault on the pressing, and a lot of people had to take, certainly the UK pressing, back to the record shops for a new copy of the album. But that's basically how I was introduced to it. Did I understand it? No, not a chance. Even though I read the entire album sleeve and I read all the lyrics, did I have a clue? Not in the slightest. I've got a slightly better angle on it these days, but parts of it where I'm just going, where are we going with this? But it's a fascinating album. I think musically it's a very, very good album as well. But I still don't know a lot about the album, really. The truth is, it's a very, very dense concept. I suppose you'd have to ask Peter Gabriel, and maybe he could sit you down and tell you all about it. But I still find it a fascinating album, and I still play it regularly. So I guess that is the measure of the album, and it's retained my interest for over 45 years now. So a long time.
Jon, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been an absolute honor picking your brain at the creative process of this incredible book you've created.
Thanks, Holly. It's been great answering the questions. I hope I've answered them to everybody's satisfaction, including your own, of course. And just not forgetting that people can actually get the book by going to my website, which is jonkirkman.co.uk, and that's JONKIRKMAN.co.uk. And there's some things online on the Facebook page, some images, etc. And I'm sure you've got some pieces from the book that you've shown people in this presentation. But it's been great talking to you today. Thank you for your questions, very illuminating. And as I said, I hope I answered them to your satisfaction. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me as well. Thank you.
And my heartfelt thanks to all of you who have watched this video with me today. I'm Holly Quibell, and we've been talking to the amazing Jon Kirkman about his creative book, And the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. If you like what you've seen in this video today, then Jon and I have some very important news for you that you might like. We've decided, due to popular demand, to print a limited edition run of just 100 of the t-shirts that you see before you right here. I personally designed this shirt for the book promotion. So we'll be having a limited run of 100 of these t-shirts. If you are interested in getting your hands on this beautiful shirt, then there's two websites you can check out. You can check out the Facebook group that's dedicated to this book. It's called Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Or you can check out my website at www.ramblingonmusic.com. There you can see up-close pictures of the t-shirt, what they look like, and also select your sizing, shipping methods, and delivery preferences. So thank you again so much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed, and of course, it's only knock on the wall, but I like it. Cheers!